In 2021, the last Airbus A380 rolled off the line, and the most ambitious passenger jet ever built was quietly declared dead. Passengers loved it. Airlines couldn't fill it. It was simply too big for the world it was born into, because carriers had stopped wanting one giant plane and started wanting many smaller ones. Now look at what just rolled out of a Boeing factory in Washington, the largest twin-engine jet in history. Over 600 orders. Emirates alone wants 270. Boeing calls it the comeback. But the three biggest airlines in America have ordered exactly 0. American 0, Delta 0, United 0. The country that builds this plane will not fly it. And once you see why, you'll realize the 777X isn't repeating the A380's success. It's repeating the exact mistake that killed it. 7 years late, $15 billion underwater, and the home team already gone. To understand what Boeing is betting on, start with the machine itself. The 777X is the largest twin-engine passenger jet in history. A single-deck wide-body engineered to carry more people farther than any two-engine aircraft before it. Powering it are two GE9X turbofans, the biggest commercial engines ever produced, with a fan diameter roughly equal to the fuselage of a Boeing 737. The wings stretch 335 feet from tip to tip, so wide that Boeing had to fold the wingtips on the taxiway just to fit standard airport gates. That combination delivers a 10% improvement in fuel burn over the older 777-300ER, jumbo capacity at twin-engine operating costs. Over 600 orders on the books, Emirates alone wants 270. The commercial case on paper is overwhelming, and yet, not one American airline wanted it. Think about that for a moment. The country that invented commercial aviation, that built the 747, that gave the world Boeing, its three biggest carriers looked at the most advanced passenger jet their most famous manufacturer had ever produced, and they all said no. American Airlines, Delta, United, a combined fleet of nearly 3,000 aircraft, 0 777X orders. That isn't a negotiation still in progress. That isn't a fleet renewal cycle that hasn't come around yet. Americans' planners were direct about it. A 400-seat jet simply doesn't fit how they fly. Delta said the same. United took the 787 and the Airbus A380 instead. Planes built for the exact opposite philosophy. Smaller, more frequent, more flexible. So here is the question the order book raises, but nobody wants to answer out loud. When the country that builds the plane won't buy it, what does that tell you about the plane? To understand what's happening with the 777X, you have to go back about 20 years, to the moment when Airbus made a bet so large, so confident, that walking it back was never really an option. The A380 launched in 2000. The logic was defensible. Hub airports were running out of slots, so the answer was to carry more people per flight. Airbus spent roughly $18 billion building the double-decker Super Jumbo. It entered service in 2007, and for a moment, it felt like the future had arrived. 2 full decks, bars upstairs, a quietness at altitude that passengers described as almost eerie. But the program needed around 420 sales to break even. By the time production ended in 2021, Airbus had delivered 251. Emirates, operating from a single mega hub in Dubai, had kept the entire line alive almost on its own. Without one airline and one airport, the A380 would have died a decade earlier. The mistake Airbus made wasn't engineering. The A380 was technically extraordinary. The mistake was a forecast, a specific load-bearing assumption that passengers would keep funneling through enormous hub airports and that slot constraints would make giant planes the only rational answer. What actually happened was that new engine technology made smaller twins efficient enough to fly long routes directly. Airlines didn't need the hub anymore, and a plane designed entirely around the hub had nowhere else to go. Now look at the 777X through exactly that lens. Boeing designed it for the same world. A 426-seat aircraft only makes financial sense when those seats are reliably full, on routes where demand is deep enough to fill a wide-body twice a day. That is the design. The entire aircraft is an answer to one specific question about how aviation works. And it is the same question Airbus asked in 2000. Some people will push back on this parallel. The 777X is a twin-engine aircraft. The A380 had 4. The 777X carries roughly 420 passengers. The A380 carried up to 853. They are not the same plane, and Boeing will tell you they are not making the same bet. That objection is fair, but it mistakes the engineering for the strategy. The A380 wasn't killed by its engine count or its passenger capacity. It was killed by the network assumption underneath it, the belief that hub concentration was where commercial aviation was heading. The 777X carries the same assumption in a smaller airframe. Emirates understands this perfectly. Their entire business model is built on funneling global traffic through Dubai, which is exactly why they ordered 270 of them. The 777X fits Emirates the way the A380 fit Emirates, completely and almost exclusively. That is not a strength. That is a warning sign dressed as a headline. Look at the 777X order book carefully, and a familiar shape emerges. Of the roughly 520 orders still on record, Emirates accounts for around 270. That is nearly 40% of the entire program resting on a single carrier, operating from a single hub in a single city. Etihad and Qatar Airways add further Gulf concentration. When you strip away the Middle East mega-hub operators, the remaining book thins considerably, and several commitments are old, placed before the delays accumulated, before the certification crisis deepened, before launch customer Lufthansa began publicly expressing its frustration. The A380 order book looked structurally similar, healthy on paper, fragile underneath. Emirates held the A380 program together almost until the end. When they briefly considered reducing their final order in 2019, Airbus announced within weeks that production would cease entirely. One airline, one decision, the whole program gone. The 777X is not there yet, but the concentration risk is measurable, documented, and has a recent, precise precedent. And then there is the weight of the program itself. Boeing has taken charges on the 777X exceeding $15 billion in development costs. In the third quarter of 2025 alone, a single accounting charge of $4.9 billion was recorded against the program. Deliveries, originally promised for 2020, have now slipped to 2027 at the earliest. Lufthansa, the launch customer, has been waiting for years. Outside Payne Field in Washington, approximately 30 finished 777X jets sit parked and undeliverable, built but requiring extensive modifications before any regulator will clear them to carry passengers. This is no longer a story about a delayed aircraft. The delays are the story. The A380 never accumulated losses at this scale before its first delivery. The 777X has. And every year, the certification process extends, the gap widens between what Boeing projected this program would cost and what it is actually costing, with no delivery revenue yet to offset any of it. None of this means the 777X is finished. Boeing will deliver it. Emirates will fly it. The aircraft is real, it is capable, and there are routes on which it makes complete sense. But the A380 was real and capable too. It flew for 17 years and carried hundreds of millions of passengers. That didn't save it. The question was never whether the plane could fly. The question was always whether the world it was built for would last long enough to justify it. For the A380, the answer turned out to be no. For the 777X, that question is still open, but it is the same question, asked again, by a different manufacturer a generation later. When the country that builds the plane won't buy it, that is not a negotiating position. That is an answer.